Great taste white caramel lang may sweet linamnam. Yung itutuyan ka sa sarap ng tamang timpla. Pinagsamang sarap ng real coffee at cream caramel. Sweet linamnam, sweet linamnam, sweet linamnam. Great taste white caramel lang may sweet linamnam. Take a break at sweet linamnamin ng bawat
New Great Taste White Caramel.
Three, two, one.
Good day everyone, I am your host Dolores and welcome to Group 5 Talk Show. Let me welcome to you our first guest. She is stunning, smart and tall. She is Miss De Guzman. And our second guest who's lovely, cute and pretty. She is Miss Empuerto. And our last guest who's humble, productive and kind. She is Miss Diasis. Wow, ang ganda na yung lahat. But before I give you the questions, let us know first the definition of emotional and behavioral disorders, the effective steps to beat the bullies, the differences between adaptive and maladaptive behavior, and the patterning personality development. Watch this.
Definition of emotional and behavioral disorder. Hayward 2003, according to him, disordered behavior is social construct. There is no clear agreement as to the criteria and parameters of normal adaptive behavior and good mental health. Different theories of emotional disturbance use concepts and terminology that do not present a clear meaning of the condition. Measuring and interpreting disordered behavior across time and setting is difficult, exact and costly endeavor. Cultural influence, expectations, and norms across an ethnic and cultural groups are often quite different. Frequency and intensity of disordered behavior is difficult to measure and control in view of the fact that children behave inappropriately at times. Disordered behavior sometimes occurs in conjunction with other disabilities such as mental retardation and learning disabilities. The effective steps to beat the bullies. Let's talk about the children. Don't show distress because it gives the bully an emotional payoff. Ignore it or ignore insults because having lost their free entertainment, the bullies will stop soon. Don't be a witness. If you see bullying happening, just walk away. It implies disapproval and weakens the bully's position by removing an essential audience. Next, the parents. Build self-confidence. A bullied child often feels somehow to blame for the situation. A healthy self-esteem allows them to behave in a positive, controlled manner. Many children don't know how to stand up for themselves without fighting back. Strengthen friendships. Encourage children to make new friends who can give moral support. Seek expert help. First, make an appointment to see your child's teacher. Bring a written report of the bullying incidents and set a mutually agreed time limit for action to take effect. Next, what is adaptive behavior? So when we say adaptive behaviors, are learned behaviors that reflect an individual's social and practical competence to meet the demands of everyday living. To meet the demands of their environments, each person must learn a set of skills. Next, when we say maladaptive behavior, it inhibits your ability to adjust healthily to particular situations. In essence, they prevent you from adapting or coping well with the demands and stresses of life. Next, we have the patterning personality development. Number 1, dependence of self-direction. The child develops into the adolescent and into the independent adult. Bound up with this growth toward independence and self-direction is the development of a clear sense of personal identity and acquisition of information, competencies, and values. Number 2, pleasure to reality and self-control. So in Freud's psychoanalytic theory of personality, the pleasure principle is a driving force of the id that seeks immediate gratification of all needs, wants, and urges. The human tendency is to seek pleasure and to avoid pain and discomfort. As the child matures, the reality principles take over and the child realizes that he or she has to perceive and face reality. Number 3, ignorance to knowledge. This information is organized into coherent patterns of assumptions concerning reality, possibility, and value that provide a stable frame of reference for guiding behavior. Number 4, incompetence to competence. The person masters the intellectual, emotional, social, and other competencies essential for adulthood acquired. Skills in problem solving, decision making, learns to control his emotion and to use them for the enrichment of living, learn to deal with others, establish satisfying relationships, learns about sexual and marital roles, occupational, parental, and other roles and relationships associated with adult life. Number 5, diffuse to articulated self-identity. The core self-identity gradually emerges as the infant differentiates himself or herself from the environment. We have the last one, the number 6, amoral to moral. Children tend to repel the good behavior taught to them at the beginning, but soon, with increasing maturity, they learn to appraise them and to work out a value orientation of their own.
Okay, wow, that was so interesting. So our first guest, Miss Di Guzman, here's my question for you. Since you're a psychologist, can you give us the knowledge about the students' emotional disorder or the disturbance and what are its classifications? Let this floor be yours.
Thank you for the question, Ms. Dolores. The IDEA definition of serious emotional disturbance on Hayward 2003, IDEA, the public law on special education in America, defines serious emotional disturbance as I, a condition exhibiting one or more of the following characteristics over a long period of time, or chronicity, and to mark degree severity, which adversely affects educational performance or difficulty in school. Letter A, an inability to learn which cannot be explained by intellectual, sensory, and health factors. Letter B, an inability to build or maintain satisfactory interpersonal relationship with peers and teachers. Letter C, inappropriate types of behavior or feelings under normal circumstances. Letter D, a general pervasive mood of unhappiness or depression or a tendency to develop physical symptoms or fears associated with personal or school problems. The IDEA definition clearly specified 3 conditions that must be met: chronicity, severity, and difficulty in school. It lists 5 types of problem or characteristic that a child with serious emotional disturbance exhibits. However, the teacher found the definition to be vague and lacking in objectivity. There was no specific behavior indicators or interpersonal relationship that were satisfactory and normal as opposed to those that were inappropriate and pervasive. Likewise, there was no distinction between serious emotional disturbance and social maladjustment. Children with social maladjustment are not considered disabled. The classification of emotional and behavioral disorders fall under 4 systems of classification. First, the Diagnostic and the Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Classification published by the American Psychiatric Association in 1994. Second, the Quiz Statistical Classification. Third, the classification derived from direct observation and measurement. And the fourth, the classification based on the degree of the severity of the disorder on Hayward 2003. Number 1, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorder 4. American Psychiatrists Association on 1994. The DSM-4 is an elaborate clinics classification system consisting of 230 separate diagnostic categories or levels to identify the various types of disorder behavior as observed by psychiatrists, psychologists, mental health personnel, and other clinicians in their regular practice. The classification system lacks reliability as shown in the way clinicians classify the clients on different categories. Another criticism about the DSM-4 classification system is the lack of guidelines for education and treatment. No useful information on intervention program and therapies are available in the manual. The American Psychiatric Association of 1994, cited by Zions on 2002, enumerates three criteria that must be met in determining the presence of emotional and behavioral disorders, particularly among adults. 1. The person experiences significant pain or distress, an inability to work or play, an increased risk of death, or a loss of freedom in important areas of life. Second classification is the Quay statistical classification. Quay and his colleagues collected a wide range of data on hundreds of children with emotional and behavioral disorders. They asked parent and teacher to accomplish rating forms of questionnaire on their children's behavior and life stories. The statistical analysis of data revealed four clusters of traits and behavior among children with emotional and behavioral disorders. First, a conduct disorder is characterized by disobedient, being disruptive, getting into fights, being bossy, and temper tantrums. Letter B, anxiety withdrawal, sometimes called anxiety disorder, is manifested by social withdrawal, anxiety, depression, feelings of inferiority, guilt, shyness, and happiness. Letter C, immaturity, shows in short attention span, extreme passivity, daydreaming, preference for your younger playmates, and clumsiness. Letter D, socialized aggression is marked by truancy, gang membership, theft, and a feeling of pride in belonging to a delinquent subculture. A significant finding in the study showed that the above cluster of behavior appear in groups rather than singly. Thus, there is a higher incidence of the conduct disorder in a child who shows anxiety withdrawal, immaturity, or social aggression. Third, direct observation and measurement. 5 dimensions of the child's display of the disorder behaviors are observed, measured, and analyzed. Letter A, the frequency, indicates the rate at which the behavior occurs and how often a particular behavior is performed. Normally, disobedient, temper, tantrum, shyness, clumsiness, and happiness are displayed by most children. However, a child with emotional and behavioral disorder engages in the undesirable behavior most of the time and shows normal behavior less often. Letter B, the duration, is a measure of the length and amount of a time of a children exhibit the disorder behaviors. The length and amount of time spent in the undesirable behavior is longer and may last for an hour or more. Normal children display temper tantrums for no more than a few minutes. Third, letter C, the topography, refers to the physical shape or form of behavior. For example, running a race and walking each has its own topography. Although the legs are used in both motor activities, running has its own shape or topography that differs from walking. The topography of the behavior displayed by children with emotional and behavioral disorder deviate from the normal. They are maladaptive, bizarre, and dangerous to the child himself and others. Letter D, the magnitude, refers to the intensity of the display behavior. For example, the magnitude of one's aggressive behavior may have a high magnitude or intensity so that the whole class is affected. A person who threatens to commit suicide by jumping off a tall building or hostage a victim displays a disruptive behavior of high intensity. The police, fire department, and people in the community all get affected by the suicide incident. Letter E, or the last, stimulus control, refers to the inability to select an inappropriate response to a stimulus. The child has difficulty in selecting the correct behavior in a social situation. In the class where all the students are expected to listen while the teacher explains the lesson, the child with emotional and behavioral disorder engage in disruptive behavior such as shouting, hitting seatmates, and similar inappropriate response to the class activity. Fourth to the last, the degree of severity. Studies conducted by Olson, Alguzin, and Skim 1980, cited in Howard 2003, indicate that the emotional and behavioral disorders can be mild and severe. The children who respond positively to therapy and intervention have a mild level of degree of emotional and behavioral disorders. They can attend regular classes and work successfully with a regular and special education teacher and the guidance counselor. Those who have severe emotional and behavioral disorders requires intense treatment and intervention. Thank you and God bless.
Wow. Thank you, Miss De Guzman. Our next guest, Miss Imperato. Can you also give us brief knowledge about what are the causes of students with emotional and behavioral disorders? And what are the characteristics of children and youth with emotional and behavioral disorders? The floor is all yours.
Okay, so thank you for that question. And for me, the causes of emotional and behavioral disorders have two factors. First is the biological factors and the environmental factors. So the biological factors, authorities believe that all children are born with a biologically determined temperament. The inborn temperament may not directly cause the behavior problems to occur, but predispose the child to behavior disturbance. Certain events that easygoing children can handle may be problematic to the other children with a difficult temperament. However, study shows that even when biological impairments exist, there are no proofs to link the physiological abnormality to the occurrence of emotional and behavioral disorders. Next is the environmental factors, like for example, home and family influence. So, studies present pieces of evidence on the correlation between the parents-child interaction patterns and the development of positive and normal behavior characteristics of a child. The relationship that the child has with the parents during the early years is critical to the way he learns to believe. Parents who create situations in a loving and caring atmospheres to meet those needs teach their children about the norms of conduct and acceptable behavior, attention and the reinforcement of positive behavior as well as the appropriate disciplines for negative behavior is an atmosphere of love and caring help shape desirable patterns of behavior. The other examples is the school experiences. There are experiences in school where children spend a large part of a day that can precipitate a occurrence of behavior problems. A child who gets all the attentions at home suddenly finds himself competing for the teacher's attention with 30 other children. There are classes rules to obey unlike at home where he or she can do as he or she pleases. It is common bigger classmates to bully the small ones leading to fight and quarrels. When a child is not ready to handle these events, he or she is sorted with internalizing or externalizing behaviors. School experiences can contribute to the development of emotional and behavioral disturbances. The causes of emotional and behavioral disorders are related to predisposing, precipitating, and sustaining factors in the occurrence of the said behavior. Predisposing factors refers to the tendencies and risks to develop emotional disturbances, like for example, physical illness or disabilities, shyness, hyperactive behavior that may come about as a result of heredity or emotionally dysfunctional home environment. Precipitating factors refers to the species indicates that may trigger the display of emotional disturbances, like for example, death in the family, abandonment, separation of parents, and other crisis situations. The continuous presence of the predisposing and the precipitating factors in the person's environment leads to the recurrence of the emotional disturbances. And for your second question, what are the characteristics of children and youth with emotional and behavioral disorders? So we have the social skills in interpersonal relationships. Studies confirms to observation that students with emotional and behavioral disorders often experience great difficulty in developing and maintaining interpersonal relationships as early as during early childhood. The problems in acquiring social skills in maintaining healthy interpersonal relationships persist through the adolescence period and childhood. In secondary school, research findings shows that these children tend to have low empathy to others as evidenced by their I don't care attitude towards people they inflict pain on. They participate in fewer curricular activities, have fewer contacts with friends, and show lower quality interpersonal relationships. Next is the antisocial behavior. These children manifest consistent and frequent disorders patterns of behavior that violate the rules and regulations at home, the laws of the community and the country. They show their disdain of society and its norm by engaging in activities that go against others and property. In the classroom, where students are expected to follow certain standard, these children maintain out-of-seat behavior, like do not complete schoolwork, run around, hit and pick up fights, disturb their classmates, ignore and talk back to and argue to the teachers and school authorities, complain excessively, and distort the truth. They still engage in vandalism by destroying public and private properties and keep the company of knowing guns and criminal elements. Other characteristics are willingness to commit rules infractions, defiance to adult authority, and violations of the social norms and mores of society. Next is the externalizing and internalizing behavioral disorders. Like some children with emotional and behavioral disorders display externalizing behavioral disorders that violate the rules and norms of society and annoy and disturb other people. Some common examples are out of seat behavior, making unnecessary noise, clumsy, constant talking to self and others, disobedience, inattention, persistent lying, constant blaming of others. On the other hand, too little social interactions of children with internalizing behavioral disorders create a serious impediment to other development. They manifest withdrawal behavior, lack social skills, often daydream, tend to be fearful of things and events without reason, and may experience serious bouts of depressions. Internalizing behavioral disorders involve mental and emotional conflict that may go unnoticed. Next is the aggressive and violent behavior. The aggression refers to the act that are abusive, that severely interfere with the activities of the other people or object and events in the environment. Example of the milder forms of aggression are teasing, crawling around, tackling, and bullying. Serve aggression include threat of physical harm, physical attack, and destruction of property and cruelty. And the last thing is the delinquency. The word delinquency is a legal term that refers to the criminal offenses committed by the adolescents. Delinquency is a behavioral disorder. Study shows that a pattern of antisocial behavior early in a child's life is a strong predictor of the delinquency in adolescents. Criminal career starts at an early age, usually by age of 12. The adolescents commit more serious offenses and continue a pattern of antisocial behavior until childhood or adulthood. Oftentimes, they are beyond the control of their parents, families, and friends. Many offenses are brought to court, but others remain unreported and unknown. Okay, and that's all, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Miss Impreto. Next guest, Miss Tiasis. Here's my question. What are the types of teaching skills and its intervention procedures that minimize behavioral problems?
Thank you for that wonderful question. What are the types of teaching skills and intervention procedures that minimize behavior problem? So there are 6 types of teaching skills. First, cooperative learning. Encourage students of mixed abilities to work together by promoting small group or whole class activities. Through verbally expressing their ideas and responding to others, your student will develop their self-confidence, as well as enhance their communication and critical thinking skills, which are vital throughout life. Next, inquiry-based instruction. Pose thought-provoking questions which inspire your student to think for themselves and become more independent learners. Encouraging students to ask questions and investigate their own ideas help improve their problem-solving skills as well as gain a deeper understanding of academic concepts, both of which are important life skills. Next, differentiation. Differentiate your teaching by allocating tasks based on student abilities to ensure no one gets left behind. Assigning classroom activities according to student unique learning needs means individuals with higher academic capabilities are stretched and those who are struggling get the appropriate support. This can involve handing out worksheets that vary in complexity to different groups of students or setting up a range of workstations around the classroom which contain an assortment of tasks for students to choose. Next, technology in the classroom. Incorporating technology into your teaching is a great way to actively engage your students, especially as digital media surround young people in the 21st century. Interactive whiteboards or mobile devices can be used to display image and videos, which helps students visualize new academic concepts. Learning become more interactive when technology is used as students can physically engage during lessons as well as instantly research their ideas, which develops behavior management. Implementing an effective behavior management strategy is crucial to gain your student respect and ensure students have an equal chance of reaching their full potential. Noisy disruptive classroom do not encourage a productive learning environment. Therefore, developing an atmosphere of mutual respect through a combination of discipline and reward can be beneficial for both you and your students. Examples include fun and interactive reward chart for younger students where individuals move up or down based on behavior, with the top student receiving a prize at the end of the week. Golden time can also work for students of all age, with a choice of various activities such as games or no homework and reward for their hard work. Next, professional development. Engaging and regular professional development programs is a great way to enhance teaching and learning in your classroom. With educational policies constantly changing, it is extremely used to attend events where you can gain inspiration from other teachers and academics. It's also a great excuse to get out of the classroom and work alongside other teachers just like you. Seasons can include learning about new educational technologies, online safety training, advice on how to use new teaching assistants, and much more. Being an effective teacher is a challenge because every student is unique. However, by using a combination of teaching strategies, you can address students' varying learning styles and academic capabilities, as well as make your classroom a dynamic and motivational environment for students.
Thank you, Ms. Assis. Thank you all ladies for guesting tonight. And that would be all. See you guys in the next video. This is the Group 5 Talk Show.